And welcome back to the Hot Lap. Prost v Senna again, sort of. I mean, remember that contract clause that stopped Ayrton Senna going to Williams because it was all Alain Prost's fault? Well, we're definitely going to get into that. And here's an interesting interview, a couple of snippets. One where Ayrton Senna even calls Alain Prost, shock horror, a coward. You may have heard it. We'll be listening to that again and giving our opinions on it. Also, this all stemmed out of a Planet F1 story about Alain Prost talking about this contract dispute and putting another take on it. Maybe, if you want to believe him, fair enough. But we will definitely pros. I even got it wrong. We'll definitely get into that. So here is the here's the video here, which I'm going to play for you, good people.
The situation is very clear. Prost has a contract with Williams, and that's for quite some time now. And in his contract, I cannot drive there. And he refuses for me to drive there alongside him. They gave him basically the right to refuse who drives next to him. And he totally refused to drive with me and clearly state that he can't cope with me, not on the relationship, but basically I pushed too hard and he can't cope anymore. I could stay with McLaren, but at this moment I'm not staying with anyone. I'm staying home.
And at that point, which I think was quite interesting, was that he's saying he wasn't sure where he was going, and this would have been the end of the 92 season, I believe, talking about he's not sure whether he's going to stay with McLaren, and then it was like a last-minute deal between him and Ron Dennis to almost be paid pretty much per race, was Ayrton Senna, who did quite well out of it financially. But here is even more revelations, well, not really revelations if you've seen it, but if you haven't, of Prost calling Ayrton Senna a coward in relation to this contract dispute where Alain Prost allegedly blocked him going to Williams.
Ayrton, it was announced by Williams that Alain Prost had signed for them today, and there's mounting speculation that McLaren might get Renault engines. Would that help you change your mind about staying with McLaren for next year?
Well, I wouldn't be able to give you a short answer because it's far too complicated, everything. The one thing all I would say is that this is supposed to be a World Drivers' Championship. We had two fantastic championships, sport championships, last year and this year. And we had, in my opinion, two very bad ones in '89 and 1990. And they were a consequence of unbelievable politics going on and a bad behavior by some people. And I think now we are coming back to the same situation again. It's impossible to accept somebody to come to a team February in the year with a signed contract, veto myself and himself too, and eventually they change his side, but stay with the veto on myself. And I think if Prost wants to be called the sole champ and 3 times world champ and come back in a sportive way, maybe win another championship, he should be sportive. The way he's doing, he's behaving like a coward. And if he wants to be sportive, he must be prepared to race anybody at any condition, at equal terms, and not the way he wants to win a championship. Everything has been laid down to him before you start. It's like if you go in a 100-meter sprint and you want to have running shoes, and everybody else should have lead shoes. That's the way he wants to race. This is no racing. And this is bad to all of us. That's it.
Ayrton, thanks for your candid answer there, and Nigel nodding there in agreement. But congratulations again, Nigel Mansell, superb win. Thanks for the record. Thanks, gentlemen.
Well, there you go, and that's in Estoril 1992. So once again, that obviously similar to the last interview you had, basically calling Prost out, calling Prost a coward, because kind of like number one in his country. That's something that other people have said about Michael Schumacher having number one in the country, but Schumacher pretty much has said that, okay, yeah, the reason why I'm number one is because I'm the fastest. If you want to be number one, be faster than me. I kind of get it, but how much of an equal footing that really, really going to be? And obviously Eddie Irvine has some interesting insights, but we're not talking about Michael Schumacher there. Did Schumacher deserve his number one status? Absolutely. I think he did, because he was one of the best, kind of like we have Hamilton and Verstappen at both the Red Bull and and the Mercedes team at the moment. But here's the actual article that started all this off. From PlanetF1.com. Hidden Ayrton Senna contract clause unearthed in bitter F1 rival dispute. So it says here that Prost obviously has cleared up this contract clause misconception that he would not accept Ayrton Senna as his teammate. Now, having sat on the sidelines in the 1992 season after being let go, let's say, from Ferrari, Prost agreed a deal to return to the sport with, at the time, the best team. Basically, they were doing a Red Bull from 2023, and that was Williams. Now, McLaren, they lost their Honda engine supply, and Senna was antsy. He really wanted that competitive car, knowing that the 1993 Williams was going to be, funnily enough, the 2023 Red Bull. And he offered to drive for free, but the move couldn't happen due to Prost allegedly having signed and vetoing the Brazilian as his teammate. That's essentially the whole story. Now, Prost clears up Ayrton Senna veto misconception here. And so with Prost and Senna not having worked together since the late 1980s as teammates, Prost was already on board at Williams. Senna found his way into the team being blocked. And he branded Prost a coward, as we've just seen in that press conference. But Prost has explained that while a clause was included in the contract, apparently it was not him who had pushed for this inclusion. Revelation. So he said, when I signed the contract, if I remember, it was January or February, so it was really, really soon in the 93 season, Prost said on that Beyond the Grid podcast. The discussion was very clear, and it said the only one I do not want as my teammate is Ayrton. You understand why. I even do not remember if it was not Frank who proposed that, because he knew that it wouldn't be possible. I had no idea about my teammate, and I was sure that it would be Nigel at the time. I did not know that it would be Damon Hill. That was January or February. I had no problem with that. I could not understand. I couldn't believe they would change two drivers together at the team. Now, with Mansell being dropped by Williams ahead of with 1993, despite being the reigning world champion and having an epic year, Prost said he had signed his contract without any knowledge of who his teammate would end up being, and that he had not signed on the provision of being guaranteed the number one position in the team. But he's adamant that he had never told Frank or Patrick Head that he would veto Senna as a teammate, and that any inclusions of the clause in his contract were inserted by the team of Head signing. He said, no, I did not try to myself. He was using the media about, but he knew for a long time that was the case. I really felt bad about this story because it's normal when he goes into a team, like many others, they all ask for the number one contract. I never asked for a number one contract. I have never been number one. I have even been number two behind Nicky when I signed. This would have been 1984. That was very clear on the contract. But I mean, you can understand, and everybody should realise and accept that I could not go to another team being a teammate with Ayrton. I guess too much bad blood. He went on to saying I had no problem fighting against him, myself at Ferrari and himself at McLaren, not doing what I'd done with him on the same team, working twice as hard, doing all the tests in the winter when he was resting in Brazil and whatever, all these things. You don't want to have it. It's very important to have a good relationship with a teammate, but a very balanced relationship. I had a fantastic relationship with Nicky and Keke and Stefan. That's Nicky Lauda, Keke Rosberg and Stefan Johansson, and for sure, obviously, Damon Hill. And he went on to saying much more than we think, and that is good for the team. Obviously, okay, some people would say it's easy because I had the advantage, but you can create your advantage. I knew that with Ayrton. I could not work the same way. And Alan Prost is basically saying another revelation is Senna really wanted me to continue. And he said by year end, Senna would get his wish as he secured, obviously, that Williams for 1994, albeit to replace, ironically, the retiring Alain Prost. Now, announcing his retirement in the close of the season in Adelaide, Prost revealed Senna, after a year of not talking to each other, despite plenty of shared podiums, he asked him to stay on in F1. He said, nothing because we did not talk, Prost said. When asked about Senna's reaction to his retirement announcement had been, the only thing Ayrton said, the first time he talked to me again, it was on the podium first, but especially after the podium, he asked me already that he wanted me to come back. 1 hour later, he said, yeah, we don't want to stop and you're going to get fat. And why? A week after he called me, when he heard that Ron Dennis asked me to test the car and said, oh yeah, that would be good. Please come back. we'd be more motivated. That was a very nice discussion, he said, but I could not expect that it was so different. While the infamously bitter Senna-Prost relationship had softened by the end of Senna's life just a few months later, Prost said he doesn't believe that he and his rival were more similar than they'd cared to admit. They were more similar than they cared to admit. No, I would not say that. No, we were different, he said. If you want, it would have been on the Beyond the Grid podcast, which it's a really, really good podcast. You can find it on iTunes and I believe YouTube. Really, really interesting. That's just a snippet from it. So yeah, I mean, fantastic stuff. Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost. Very similar, almost to Hamilton versus Verstappen, or Hamilton versus Rosberg as well. Schumacher versus Damon Hill. I mean, F1 has its classic rivalries. Well, what's going to be interesting going into the 2024 season is Prost the coward? I don't think so. For that, I have no reason not to believe him, but because people around there would have known what the contract is and potentially who did it. So I don't think he's lying. But he's not denying that the contract did state that, and I can completely understand from Ayrton's point of view. Essentially, wanting to call Prost the coward. So there we go. That's that. But going into 2024, is it going to be Verstappen Hamilton again, or Verstappen Leclerc? Is it even going to be Verstappen Perez? Maybe. I'm a bit more doubtful on that. Anyway, stay tuned. If you made it to the end, you're a champion. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, comment below. Let us know what you think, and we'll speak to you soon.